Next up, we have design and maintenance considerations for fire-safe landscaping by Dwight Good. Dwight is the battalion chief and fire marshal for the city of Morgan Hill, South Santa Clara County Fire Protection District, and CAL FIRE Santa Clara Unit jurisdiction. He has received an AA, BS, and MS degrees and completed the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program. Dwight is the co-chair of Northern California Fire Prevention Officers Wildland Urban Interface Standards and has published research, including work on determining ignitability in organic groundwater materials. In 2016, Dwight received the Blue and Gold Award, and in the last 2 years, he's moved to Morgan Hill with his wife, a resource specialist in Gilroy School District, and his daughter, and has 3 lovely grandchildren. Please welcome Dwight Good.
Thank you. So how do I control this? Use it around. Okay. Thank you. Good morning. It's a heck of an introduction. My name's Dwight. I'm standing between you and lunch. So let's keep this thing moving along. I'd like to talk about fire-safe landscaping. I grew up in a world, well, my father's world, where a man was judged by the quality of his lawn. We suffered through a drought in San Francisco City in the 70s and defaulted to green concrete. I've lived through the horrid white quartz rock landscaping with the cow head somewhere in the fence. I've stumbled through drought-resistant landscaping at my house, child-resistant landscaping at my house, deer-resistant landscaping at my house. But mostly in the last few years, most near and dear to me is fire-resistant landscaping. Our world is changing. Our world is changing. The statistics that we're seeing right now in California are absolutely unsettling. The fires aren't staying in the woods. It's not those people's problem anymore. The most significant categories that we're seeing now for fire loss and wildfires is in the urban environment. It wasn't supposed to be this way. We have to adjust. So that's why I'm here. So CAL FIRE, Smokey Bear, we've done some great messaging over the years. Smokey Bear told us all that fire is bad, right? We, as a society, embrace that message. Fire is bad. That put pressure on the fire service, my predecessors, to get really good at putting fires out. And we put them all out. We got good at it. California has the finest firefighting air force, collection of bulldozers, hand crews, fire engines. We're huge. We're also very expensive. And now we're finding that it's still not enough because our environment is changing. So one of CAL FIRE's messages over the years was 100 feet of defensible space around your house, right? And most folks in the urban or the more rural settings have gotten that message. But there was also some implication that fire marches in a neat little line like my soldiers here. And when it comes up to your 100-foot defensible space, it'll stop very politely and work that way. That's not how fire works. The fires, especially the fires that we're seeing now that are wind-driven, and by the way, across the state of California, your fire service keeps statistics like Major League Baseball. I can tell you what normal looks like. Normal is changing. So in an average year in California, we respond to about 6,000 wildland fires. That number is not changing, but some of them are getting really big, right? That's the new mega fire thing we're dealing with, and that's because the ground's a little bit drier, the ground's a little bit warmer. We're coming out of, well, somebody, I think you said 5 years of drought. We're thinking it's about 7 years of drought. And so after last winter and this winter, where we're getting some lovely, abundant rainfall, the dead stuff's still dead. It's going to stay dead. And what these late winter, early spring rains do is they push up the beautiful annual grass crops that in the next 6 or 7 weeks will mature. And in the next 3 or 4 weeks after that, so figure 3 or 4 weeks after Easter, they will start to dry and cure, because it happens every year, right? And now we have this beautiful bumper crop of dead, dry, standing grasses. They're ready to go. All the dead stuff that died in the last 7 years through the drought and the bark beetle kill and all that fun stuff is still there. It's ready to burn. So what's changing is we're getting some really profound wind events. But yeah, fire doesn't march in a neat little line like my soldiers. All fires start small. They all start small. And as much as I love landscaping, I've come to view the world as a collection of fuel packets. Everything burns. Everything burns. Everything. So all the plants, all the brush, all the trees, the grass, the mulch, it is all fuel. It all burns. So any Boy Scouts in the room? Any former Boy Scouts? Okay, you ever built a campfire? Right, you start with some really small, fine stuff, and then you add some slightly larger stuff, and you blow on a little bit. Eventually you get into some larger, heavier fuels. So there's a natural progression to fire. You don't start a fire by lighting the side of a house. You start a fire by lighting some small, finely divided dry material. So I've been saying, well, I'm getting louder in my peer group over the years. California has the most rigorous building standards for the wildland environment in the civilized world. I'm on the committee that helps write those standards and revise those standards, and we keep making them tighter, and it makes construction more expensive. And we're building homes that are more capable of enduring a fire insult from the outside. And we never come back to address the maintenance issues and the landscaping issues. Last month I probably really hurt some landscape designers' feelings, probably hurt their feelings pretty badly, because they gave me landscape plans for this small residential development in a very high fire hazard severity zone. It is in a chaparral plain. And their landscape plan was extremely fire prone. And I didn't even make comments, they just said no. Just no. There was nothing I liked about their plans. I am not advocating for a moonscape, but we have to be smart. Remember, everything wants to burn. The problem we're seeing with the fires is not the neat little line of soldiers marching across the grasslands. It's the embers. Think more like the flying monkeys from The Wizard of Oz. Okay, we are seeing ember cast start spot fires a mile and a half ahead of the main body of fire. Anywhere around your home, your yard, in your landscaping, anywhere you find that leaves collect when the wind blows, the embers will gather. Anything there that is receptive to ignition, given time and the right conditions, will ignite. So, it's the embers. The embers are a huge part of the problem. 100-foot defensible space for the rural areas, great. Fire-resistant construction standards, great. We got to get back to the landscaping. So, fire-resistant vegetation, strategic plannings. I would like to see fewer houses burn in this state. I think it's if you want to keep clients, you want to keep their houses, right? That's a good thing. I'm also a big fan of water conservation. A few years ago, when we were in serious drought mode, I had to figure out how to train young firefighters how to fight fire without using water. We were not allowed to use water. How do I teach a young man or a young woman to handle a fire hose full of water and apply that water to a fire and manage the kickback from the nozzle without using water? How do we do this? So yeah, saving water is important. It really, really is. So I'm going to talk about some common fire-prone plants in the handout out there, which is a lot more important, and I really hope it's a good takeaway. There are a list, still not complete, of plants that we really like, plants that I would like to see, like in that little residential subdivision that's underway in a chaparral plain. I did send them back this. Please look at this plant palette. These are ones we like. So yeah, I'm going to talk about things you should avoid, things that should be removed. We'll talk about defensible space zones briefly. Is it defensible space? Is this a new concept? Okay, all right. So in my world now, from the exterior wall to about 5 feet out, should be non-combustible. Should be non-combustible. From that exterior wall to about 30 feet out should be fairly limited. So the fuel packets out there, you can have some fuel out there, but what we're trying to do is minimize the heat insult. In the world I work in now, we look at these things as kilowatt hours in energy release rates. And it's not necessarily the direct flame contact, it's the prolonged heat insult, the radiant heat, and it all factors in. So we're trying to minimize that heat insult. Maintenance, 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 I've heard a lot about that this morning. So I already mentioned the dead stuff burns, right? Okay, so we want to remove the dead stuff. I talked briefly about the natural progression of fire. Fire starts usually in the grasses. It's a bad thing when it gets into the trees, so we try to create some separation between the fuels on the ground and the branches in the trees. So a good rule of thumb is if you can walk under those trees and not lose a hat, you're probably okay. So we're removing the ladder fuels, the things that would allow the fire to progress into the trees. The fires, the big catastrophic fires that we've seen in the last few years have progressed from grass to a brush model to tree canopy, and then ultimately into the built environment. And ladies and gentlemen, once we're into a house-to-house conflagration, the battle's lost. For us, it's lost. There's not much we can do until the wind stops blowing. We're not fighting fire anymore. We're evacuating people and trying to preserve human life. That's it. There's not enough water in the world to stop this. So, yeah, the little things matter. So, I'm going to give you kind of my short list of fire-prone plants that we really don't like. And there were an awful lot of these on that landscape plan set that I saw. An awful lot of these. So yeah, in no particular order, because I did condense this for the time frame I have. I'm just going to scan through these. If anybody's really shocked, just holler. So I'll repeat again and again, dead stuff burns. When you're doing maintenance, pick up the leaf litter, pick up the needles, trim out the dead branches. Separate these things from your client's home. These are ones I really don't like. So yeah, these are fire prone. Here's some more. You keep showing up. So in a world where these wildfires are transitioning to an urban environment and we're seeing Kmart burn in an 8-acre asphalt parking lot, how in the world did we get there? There's a lot of little things that progress. So we're looking hard at streetscapes, parking lot landscaping now, because fires are not stopping at the stop signs. They're not stopping at the property lines. They're not stopping at the jurisdictional boundaries anymore. Bay is, well, that's one of my favorite villains. California Bay is the most prolific carrier of sudden oak death. It's like the little kid with the runny nose at school that makes everybody sick. I really like the oaks. Not so fond of the bays. Here's a few more. Yeah, chaparral. Anytime we're in the chaparral world, it's a concern. You have plants that were built to burn. They were built to survive in very arid climates. They have these beautiful little tiny leaf structures, most of them, right? Lots of surface area to mass. And they're full of resins and oils because that's how they survive through the drought. They love to burn. They love to burn. So yeah, I talk about separation of plants. Remember, we're breaking up those fuel packets so we don't have that massive heat insult. Cypress, there is a planter. It wouldn't speak to me for 3 months because he came to me with a row of cypress trees. Cypress trees belong in cemeteries, not in residential developments. I don't like cypress anywhere. But so no, he was very upset because he liked that row of cypress trees. I did not. There's a few more. Eucalyptus. Of course, eucalyptus is here to stay. There's a lot of reasons it came to California. None of them turned out well. And now the monarch butterfly has decided that's a better habitat food source than milkweed. That's an interesting new twist. Pampas grass. Nothing eats it. Nothing lives in it. It's insanely difficult to kill. And it likes to burn. I am looking at a $50,000 eradication project just outside of Morgan Hill. We have this huge explosion of pampas in an open space. It's got to go. How do I do that and not have really adverse impacts on the environment? I'm still working on that. Brooms. These can be some very expensive eradication projects. These are cute little plants that you can buy at Home Depot, and they don't stay in the pot. They don't stay in the pot. So yeah, my care and maintenance instructions here are pretty simple. Remove it. Remove it. Remove it. I'm cutting to the chase. Junipers. I loathe junipers. Nobody wants to maintain them. Have you ever tried to clean up a juniper, anybody? Okay, I love gin. I hate junipers. Junipers are prickly, sticky little rascals, right? And they collect dead stuff. They're full of oil. They like to burn. When the junipers burn, the heat release is profound. It is profound. They burn hot and they burn for a very long time. So I'm telling people, you know what? You've got that neat little row of, actually that 30, 40-year-old row of junipers along your driveway or along that common road that people would need to use to get out of here in the event of a fire. And nobody is going to be able to drive by those junipers if they're burning. It'll be too hot. So yes, we're attacking junipers. There are some communities in California that have actually legislated a ban. They actually want them gone. So you see junipers, I see little green gas cans. So manzanita, pines, tan oaks, scrub oaks, and I'm really torn on tan oak. Tan oak is a really kind of precious indigenous plant. It has religious significance to some Native American tribes. It is dying at a frightening rate because of sudden death. But it still likes to burn. So rosemary, I like rosemary. As your rosemary becomes a hedge and it starts to mature, you get a lot of dead woody material in there. You got to clean it out, move the plants out. When they're young and succulent, little babies, they really don't want to burn, and they smell good. Yes. Oh yes. I've spent way too much time on this subject. Combustible ground covers, mulches. I'm really not a fan of mulches. Mulches burn. Did I mention that dead stuff burns? Okay. Arbor mulch is dead stuff that got chipped up and is decomposing already. It's one of the worst for ignition prone ground covers. I've done an awful lot of testing on this. So what I've told the city of Morgan Hill is that if you must use arbor mulch, use it in shaded, irrigated, low traffic areas. From my own scientific madness, my wife hated me one summer. I was baking mulches on cookie sheets in her oven at extremely low temperature, and then taking them out in the yard and trying to light them on fire with cigarettes. It's science. These were controlled experiments. The magic happens at about 7% humidity. When you can get your fuel moistures down to 7% or less, this stuff will burn. It will ignite, it will burn. It's not a very spectacular fire, but it's looking for something, remember that natural progression? It's looking for something that will contribute energy to the problem. We're seeing houses that burn in the wildland, these wildland fires, because embers like the mulch. The mulch is right up against the fence, the mulch is right up against the exterior siding on the house, and the fire just walks up and works its way into the house. So, separate. Use this stuff judiciously. Think about where you're putting it. This is probably heresy. I like the rubber mulches. They're actually hard to ignite. I know they don't do anything good for your soils, right? They don't do anything good for your soils. But Mr. Practical, they don't do anything, well, we're still keeping the rubber out of the landfill. But they don't float away in a flood, right? You can clean it off with a leaf blower. It stays put. It's really hard to ignite. But if it is burning, you really want it more than 5 feet away from your house. Okay, enough about that. So fences. Fences are fuses. The National Institute of Standards and Technology spent a lot of time last fall lighting fences on fire and lighting mulches on fire. It was neat because they were able to replicate some of my stuff and add a couple of new twists. And I must not have lived right in a previous life because I don't get paid to run around in a lab coat and light things on fire. I think that would be a cool job. But they did a whole bunch of testing. And they confirmed things we already knew. Fences are fuses. So they did some testing and they said, gee whiz, what if there was some air gap between the mulch? Because we're seeing a lot of small yards now, right? The world's getting more dense in the urban environment. You're getting little tiny yards. So you get a little tiny fence and a little tiny side yard. You want some landscaping and bang, here goes the mulch. And the mulch is up against the fence. So one of the questions was, what if there's a gap between the mulch and the bottom of the fence? And if it was more than 6 inches, that'd be great, but that wouldn't keep my Yorkie in the yard, right? So, it's a big puzzle. So how do you solve the wooden fence problem? How do you break the fuse? The simplest thing to do is put in a non-combustible gate. It could even be a pretty gate. You got a client that likes pretty. My wife likes pretty. I think she's my biggest client. So the gate had to be pretty. It was non-combustible. So yeah, for your home ignition zone, you want to work with your clients. But you want a fire-free area. So nothing within 5 feet of that house that wants to burn. So that includes landscaping, furniture, firewood. Does anybody still burn wood? There's a few people who still burn wood, but you need some gap. That first foot, I would advocate for mineral soil or rock. I like rock. Let's not bring back the white quartz, but I like rock. Yeah, remember, embers will collect where you find leaves. That's just how the world works. And yeah, use mulch around your trees, absolutely. It's a great way to conserve water. Mulches are best, in my opinion, in areas where the soil never really dries out. Remember that 7% humidity in your fuels? If your mulches are at 7% humidity, your soils are bone dry. Right? So a little bit of irrigation, a little bit of shade life is good. I think that's really all I'm going to give you today. Do you have any questions?
I was just asking about, or wondering about liquid amber. It's not on your list, but from what I understand, those little gumballs connect as kindle for fires.
They could, and I don't like liquid amber, but not as a firefighter. I don't like liquid amber as a homeowner. My wife doesn't like those little spiky balls because they hurt her feet. I don't like it because it smells like carrots to me. That's just, but it doesn't really contribute to fire spreader growth.
I haven't seen something that I have considered a long time, and I'm wondering if it's even been considered by you for housing standards. I happened to get a hold of the monolithic dome site, and they have a magnificent fire going through over a house, and the house isn't burning at all. And the firefighters ran inside, if they do concrete, and therefore like just like your concrete areas where you would test your firefighters, the houses don't burn. And I'm wondering why the code, if you're going to build in fire-prone areas, why we don't have non-combustible houses, one, and two, why we aren't making fire outposts. So if you're building in that area, why can't we have so the fire engines pull in, the people can get there, and they're protected? I haven't seen that mentioned, but I have thought of it for some time.
That's good stuff. I would advocate for that, the fireproof buildings. I was in a meeting yesterday with some very bright people. We're working on the next generation of California's building standards for the wildland urban interface. And somebody threw it out, gee whiz, why don't we just outlaw wood construction? That would solve a lot of problems. The monolithic, the dome, yeah, it's the 21st century relative of the old geodomes. You can do it. It's not cheap. There's not a big appetite or demand for it. It's not impossible by any means. I've got a couple of people now that are working on the, it's almost that 3D printer concrete styrofoam block thing. We have to do some torture testing. Somebody will try to burn them down. We will try to burn them down repeatedly before we decide that they're okay. But my gosh, it took us 20 years to get the fire-resistant treated styrofoam insulation out from under the concrete slabs on the homes in California. And we all knew it was a bad idea. It doesn't need to be fire-resistant. Those chemicals leach into the ground. As far as posting firefighters where people are building, it's a great idea, but we're a very expensive insurance policy. And very few communities can afford that kind of insurance policy. Unfortunately, that's where that conversation goes. Better yet, land use planning encourages development closer to your service areas.
Is it possible to get a copy of the fire prone list? Because I couldn't write fast enough.
Actually, that list is both on it, on the back.
Does it?
On
Oh, thank you.
The list at the end of it, the first couple pages are likes, and I think the next couple pages are dislikes.
The last page.
The last page is a dislike page.
So you mentioned a couple of species that I see commonly available in nurseries, Home Depot, Lowe's, stuff like that, like Scotch broom. Is there any push to like ban those species from landscapes, stuff like that? I mean, I've seen that some new installations that the entire property is like Scotch broom, like a new home, newly constructed.
Yeah, that's above my pay grade.
Okay.
I love the concept. Yeah, if I were king for a day, there would be a few sweeping changes like that.
Got it.
There is an organization, a nonprofit in San Francisco called, I want to say Planet Right. Am I getting it right? Yeah. And we link to it on South Bay Green Gardens. And one of the things they do is their big push is to have nurseries in California and plant retailers, whatever they're called, to not sell or grow or market to the public in any way, shape, or form invasives like Scotch broom, whatever. And so it'd be interesting, because I know they're all about like not having invasives. It'd be interesting if they also included in there a push to not sell the really flammable material as well. But you can, they're a great organization. I recommend going to their website. We link to them on South Bay Green Gardens, and I think we did a blog post on them as well.
Sure. That's funny. I think we've all dealt with the aftermath of the homeowners' landscape plans based on what was on sale at Home Depot. Yeah. We've all dealt with that, right? The little birch trees are pretty at the store, and sometimes they're on sale. They do not last here. The birch trees do not belong here. They do not thrive. We know that, right? They need a lot of water. At best, you're going to get them up to about 30 feet before they croak. Same thing with those darn sequoias. Costco sells those darn sequoias. There's not enough water here to support them. The summers get too warm, and usually I see them die at about 30 feet. But you can go buy more. You know, Costco will sell them to you for $12 a pot, I think. So, yeah.
You mentioned many species from the chaparral native plant community. Can you clarify that those species like manzanita and black sage, they should not be in the defensible space, or what setback from the exterior wall or a fence should those kinds of species be?
So this area of California has transitioned from what was an oak savanna to a lot of chaparral. The chaparral birds. Chaparral likes to burn. You look at Southern California birds, mostly chaparral cover. In a perfect world, through a natural cycle, you would lose your conifers, you would lose your oaks to a fire, natural progression, and you would transition from a grass model to a chaparral model, and then eventually back into oak or pine, oak or conifer. The fires are too frequent in some places, too severe in some places, and when you get down into Santa Barbara, it just burns. So that we never get past the chaparral model. I would recommend minimum 30 feet, minimum 30-foot separation, and in your maintenance cycle, don't let it clump up. Try not to let it spread. Strangely, some strains of manzanita are very fire resistant. They really don't like to burn. Some of them, I'm not that good. I can't tell you which ones they are. It's the same thing with eucalyptus. Some of them really don't like to burn. There's a few of them. With the mulches, I tested a lot of mulches. Playground 5R, does that?
Yeah.
Okay. That one's really hard to burn. I was almost frustrated trying to get it up to light. It's tough. I think as it ages and decays, it probably it loses its ability to retain moisture. But it seems like the wood products that are fresh, moist, expensive, are pretty fire resistant. But back to your chaparral, it's minimum 30 feet, and anything between 30 feet and 100 feet, you want small packets of plant.
I was going to ask. So I know you had over here. I know you had California buckwheat on the list, and I can honestly see how that could absolutely be a problem if it is not maintained, because it does get very, very woody and it does spread. But I also think if you maintain it and really cut it back every year, you're not getting that same fuel load. So I'm wondering if there's some aspect of maintenance with some of these plants.
There's maintenance with a lot of these plants.
That they do much better if but something that's just not maintained,
right,
like that could really be a huge problem.
Right, it's the same thing with the rosemary. If it was maintained and irrigated and well loved, it would never want to burn.
Right. Yeah, great.
Where are we with Magnolia grandiflora? With the big leaves?
Doesn't really seem to be a fire issue for us. I love magnolias. They don't belong here.
Right.
There's a stand of magnolias around my office, and a few years ago, and I've never really considered myself the advocate for plant preservation, but in the last 6 years, I've really become the Lorax. And I fought vigorously to save those magnolias, partly because we have a family of squirrels that decided those are food. And until about 4 years ago, I had never considered magnolia seed pods as a food source for anything. But the squirrels are fat and happy and looking good. And I like the squirrels make me happy. That's kind of my when I need to take a break, and get rid of some stress, and I'll go take a walk through the parking lot and watch the squirrels. And the squirrels eat the seed pods, and so somebody wanted those trees gone because they're nesting.
Thank you.
One more question?
Just a comment. I think we're all in the landscape industry, and I'm really concerned about what is our message about fire and landscape, because many of the plants, you just said magnolias, they don't belong here, but oaks do, and yet they're on your list.
Right.
And rosemary, as you said, if it's not maintained, it can be a fire hazard, but if it's irrigated, it can. And I'm just concerned about how people outside of the landscape industry are going to understand this information. Particularly as it relates to someone selling, for example, xeriscaping, and the house happens to be in a fire-prone area.
Right. Well, this is a complex conversation. This patch on my shirt says I actually work for the California Natural Resources Agency and answer to the California Board of Forestry. And in respect to those agencies, I would have to advocate for a native or indigenous plant palette. I know who signs my paycheck. I also know that's not always ideal. And I'm maybe a heretic because I've proposed introducing some new oaks from Mexico, some red oaks out of Mexico, because our oaks are getting sick. And they're getting sick. They're having trouble adapting to the sudden of death and a few other pathogens. They're having trouble adapting to increased soil temperatures and more arid climates, and it bothers me to see our oaks getting sick and dying. It bothers me to see Cambria pines. Cambria pines will transition to coastal live oak in my lifetime, and there's no way to stop it. That bothers me. So arguing with my bosses maybe on what's really native, because those red oaks out of Mexico there that really show a lot of promise and they have a very elastic range. How native is native? I mean, that's technically still North America, you know? So these are complex conversations. I would say my message to your clients is one of think about fire, think about the embers. I would try to keep it simple. Just remember, dead stuff burns, and it would be bad if your house burned, because your house is also made of dead stuff.
Well, thank you, Dwight. Looks like that's it.
Thank you.